You hear it all the time, right? Just adult entertainment. Consenting adults watching consenting adults, so, like, what's the big deal?
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that's often, well, it's discussed in hushed tones, maybe dismissed entirely. The pervasive influence and, honestly, the surprising realities of pornography.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to cut through those common assumptions. We want to dive deep into what the research actually tells us. We're drawing from a really fascinating resource, The Porn Myth, Exposing the Reality Behind the Fantasy of Pornography by Matt Fradd. We're going to pull out the key insights and explore how porn truly impacts, individuals, relationships, and society as a whole.
And look, if you're out there maybe prepping for a difficult conversation, or you just want to be more informed about a pretty critical cultural issue, or maybe you're just curious about what's really going on beneath the surface, then this deep dive, well, it's your shortcut. It's a complex topic, and it's evolved, frankly, way faster than our public awareness has kept up.
That's for sure.
We're aiming for those aha moments, the ones that reveal what's really happening.
Okay.
So let's unpack this first big myth that porn is just adult entertainment.
Right.
When you hear that phrase, adult entertainment, we usually think, okay, not suitable for children. Simple enough. But what if it's not actually suitable for adults either?
Well, what's really striking is how that term adult gets used and how its meaning has, dramatically shifted over time.
How so?
Think about it. 100 years ago in England, a gentleman's club, that was a respectable private place.
Right. Stuffy armchairs, maybe?
Exactly. Today, that phrase makes you instantly think of striptease, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally different vibe.
And same thing, 50 years ago, the adult section in a library. That meant, classic literature, serious stuff, not something explicit.
Okay.
It's almost like saying, I don't know, heroin is not suitable for children, which, yeah, obviously it isn't. But that doesn't automatically mean it's healthy or good for anyone over 18 either, right?
That's a really powerful analogy. It makes you think how language itself can be, well, manipulated.
And the source makes it clear this wasn't some accidental drift in meaning. It was quite strategic.
Strategic? How?
Well, back in 1953, Hugh Hefner launches Playboy. Now, to the distributors, he apparently marketed it as softcore porn.
Okay.
But to his target audience, these upwardly mobile men, it was pitched as a lifestyle magazine.
Okay.
Totally. It essentially gave, as the book puts it, permission to the self-defined middle-class American male to indulge in porn. It just reframed the whole thing.
Oh.
And, that leads us right to a really crucial question. What actually makes someone mature?
Right. What does that even mean?
Well, neuroscientists talk a lot about this. They often point to the prefrontal cortex. That's kind of the brain's CEO, right? Responsible for willpower, decision-making.
And it's not fully cooked until later, is it?
Exactly. It's still developing until you're about 25. And research is suggesting that excessive internet access to porn, it isn't just passive viewing. It's actively digitally rewiring boys' brains.
Rewiring them? For what?
Specifically for change, novelty, and excitement. That's a profound impact on a brain that's still under construction.
So the big insight here isn't just about age ratings. Adult entertainment is this carefully crafted label that might be fundamentally reshaping our brains, our expectations, even when we are adults.
Well, it's not just mature content. It's content that directly impacts our maturity.
Okay, this next one, this is where it gets really interesting. Myth number 2. Porn empowers women.
Ah, yes. This one mixes up a lot.
There's a strong argument, especially from what's called sex-positive feminism, a movement that often tries to reclaim sexual expression as liberating, that porn actually empowers women.
Yeah, the idea is it challenges repressive norms, lets women boldly claim sex for themselves. What's the core idea there?
Well, proponents like Ellen Willis, who actually coined sex-positive feminism, she argued that being anti-porn just plays into old patriarchal ideas.
How so?
Like saying porn is violence against women was, for her, code for this old-fashioned idea that men want sex and women just put up with it.
Right, the neo-Victorian thing.
Exactly. And more recently, you have figures like Bill Knox, who was a Duke student and porn star, saying things like sexual liberation is paramount to achieving progress and equality. Her argument was that even, pro-kink stuff can be empowering because women are shown enjoying sex.
Okay. On the surface, it sounds compelling, right? Especially if you're thinking about breaking taboos purely theoretically.
Definitely. But for a lot of people listening, there's this strong counter-narrative. How does the book handle that, this sex-positive view versus the often really harsh lived experiences of women in the industry? What does the source actually reveal about this empowerment?
Well, the source brings in other perspectives. There's Robert Jensen, a journalism professor. He went to the 2008 Adult Entertainment Expo and observed, even for the sort of girl next door type porn, he said it was clear that pornography at its core is a market transaction. Women's bodies, their sexuality, offered up to male consumers to maximize profit.
Just a transaction.
He put it pretty bluntly, actually. He said it's ultimately about attracting the most wankers possible.
Oof. All right.
And then you have Naomi Wolf talking about how young women on college campuses feel like they just can't compete with these cyber visions of perfection, downloadable, disposable.
That pressure to live up to an impossible image.
Right. And Dr. Anna Bridges observed women rationalizing their partner's porn use with these permission-giving beliefs like, oh, all guys look at porn.
Which isn't really empowerment, is it? It sounds more like resignation.
Exactly. Or self-deception, maybe. And then you hear from the performers themselves, and it gets even more telling.
Like Belle Knox.
Yeah, Belle Knox herself, despite those initial claims of empowerment. In a documentary, she admitted the industry makes her cynical and bitter, always looking out for scammers, enduring painful sex with men she found repulsive, risking losing herself to her alter ego.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite a contrast.
And even Jenna Jameson, the queen of porn.
Yeah, huge name.
She described this moment of realization like, these guys didn't care about seeing a show. They just wanted to see some skin. So much for my delusion of actually being respected.
That's heartbreaking.
She talked about her soul goes on with sickness, and chillingly, she said she'd tie her daughter in the closet if her daughter ever wanted to get into the industry.
Good Lord. So if you tie all that together.
Well, the argument for empowerment often seems to just overlook the harsh realities, right? The commodification, the psychological toll, the widespread disempowerment many experience. The source ultimately suggests that maybe feminist pornography is an oxymoron because it feeds what it calls a system of oppression instead of actually dismantling it.
So the bottom line seems to be the idea of empowerment for a few women can actually create a profoundly disempowering environment for many others, both in the industry and among viewers, too.
It seems that way, yeah.
And speaking of potential harm, let's tackle a claim that's maybe even more startling. Myth number 3. Pornography actually prevents rape and sexual violence.
Right. This one is, it's provocative and, frankly, shocking to many people.
But some economists, some researchers, they've actually argued that, look, with porn being so available, maybe men's sexual aggression gets channeled, reduced.
Yeah, the theory is it acts as a substitute for real-world violence. How could that possibly be true?
Well, some economists, like Todd D. Kendall and Anthony D'Amato, they argue exactly that. They point to the decline in reported rape rates since internet porn became widespread.
Okay.
And they claim no scientist had ever found that pornography raised the probability of rape. The idea being, maybe if a man feels like raping someone, perhaps masturbating to porn, gets it out of his system.
That's an interesting hypothesis. But the data, well, it's way more complex than that, isn't it?
How so?
Well, while some surveys show that decline in reported rates, other major studies, like the National Women's Study, they actually report higher rates of rape and sexual assault. And they stress these things are grossly underreported.
So the numbers themselves are debated.
Heavily. And then you have the really chilling confession from Ted Bundy.
The serial killer.
Yeah. He directly stated that pornography played a significant role in his descent into violence.
Wow. Okay, so even if you can't draw a direct causal line in every single case.
Exactly. Even if direct causation isn't, universally proven for everyone, the question becomes, what kind of behavior, what attitudes does porn normalize?
Right. What does it teach us?
The source talks about categories of men who might not commit overt rape, but are still profoundly influenced. Guys who buy sex from prostituted women, or watch films showing rape-like acts, or even find the idea of rape sexually arousing, or men whose arousal depends on feeling dominant, having power over a woman.
And the content itself.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
It's deeply concerning. One study looked at top-selling porn videos and found, get this, 88% of scenes had physical aggression.
88%?
Yeah. And 49% had verbal aggression. And here's the kicker. In 95% of those aggressive scenes, the person on the receiving end reacted neutrally or even positively.
So aggression is shown as...
Okay,
or even desirable.
Pretty much. Only 10% showed healthy things like kissing or compliments.
It's staggering.
And, maybe most significantly, the source describes pornography as a brilliant social marketing campaign for commercial sexual exploitation.
How does that work?
Well, it acts as direct marketing for traffickers, right?
Yeah.
They use pornographic images to lure buyers. But it also influences the whole culture by whetting men's appetites for sex that few women are willing to give unless they are paid or forced.
So it creates demand for something exploitative.
Precisely. Interviews with Johns, guys who by sex reveal they often prefer dominance control, viewing women like a vending machine, or even seeing prostitution as paid rape.
Paid rape. My God.
And many prostituted women report that Johns use specific porn scenes to dictate exactly what acts they want performed. So this fantasy translates directly into real-world demands and exploitation.
So what's the real takeaway then? That idea that porn prevents sexual violence. It seems profoundly challenging when you actually look at the content, how it influences users, and its undeniable links to sex trafficking.
Yeah, it seems to normalize and even encourage harmful attitudes and behaviors rather than somehow deterring violence.
Okay, moving on. Myth number 4. Porn is only fantasy. It doesn't affect our real lives.
Right, it's just pixels argument.
Exactly. It's on a screen. It's not real, so how can it really affect my life, my relationships? But does what we consume digitally really stay digital?
Well, think about it this way. The advertising industry spends billions, right? Billions every year. Why?
Because it works. Because media does affect behavior.
Exactly. They know fundamentally that what we consume shapes us. The book explains this really well using the idea of observational learning.
Observational learning.
Yeah, it's basically how we learn by watching. Like how kids mimic adults or how we pick up habits just by seeing them modeled. It applies just as much to the digital stuff we watch.
That makes sense. And there are examples.
Absolutely. There are Norwegian researchers who actually proposed creating safe sex porn.
Seriously.
Why? Well, their reasoning was they acknowledged porn's power to teach sexual behavior.
So if it can teach safe sex,
then it can certainly teach aggression or unrealistic expectations or anything else it portrays. And research backs this up. One big study looked at porn and sexual aggression.
Yeah. What did it find?
It found a really strong, concerning link. For men who were already considered high risk for sexual aggressiveness, high pornography use was strongly related to actual sexual aggression.
Wow. So it's not just fantasy for everyone.
And the effects can be really far-reaching. There was this study at Florida State University. They had students reduce or eliminate porn use. Those students ended up significantly more committed to their actual relationships compared to a group who gave up their favorite food but kept watching porn.
More committed. Why?
Well, the study suggests a powerful influence. Maybe it's the direct impact of the porn itself, or maybe it's just, having more time and mental energy for real human interaction when porn isn't in the picture.
Could be both, I guess.
Could be. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, porn really shapes how we view sex, how we view partners. There was an analysis of Rolling Stone magazine covers over time.
What did they find?
An increasing hypersexualization of women, presenting them mainly as instruments of sexual pleasure and visual possession.
So it creates these
unrealistic standards for women, yeah. And it plants improper expectations in the minds of men.
And didn't we talk about the brain rewiring earlier?
We did, that whole digitally rewired for novelty thing.
Yeah.
That means a real partner, no matter how attractive, can actually become less arousing over time compared to the endless novelty online.
Which leads to?
Often, lower sexual satisfaction with real-life partners and higher rates of infidelity, according to the research.
So pulling it all together, that fantasy, it really doesn't stay contained, does it?
No, it leaks into our brains, into our relationships, into our expectations about intimacy, and often really to their detriment.
Which brings us nicely, I guess, to myth number 5. Married life will cure us of our porn obsessions.
The marriage cure.
Yeah, it's hope a lot of people hold on to, isn't it? Once I'm married, this problem will just poof, disappear. I'll have a real available sexual partner. Porn won't have the same pull. But is that how it works? Is a partner the cure for a porn habit?
Well, what's really striking here, and the source points this out, is that someone hooked on porn isn't just seeking, an orgasm.
No. What are they seeking then?
The book uses this great analogy from Blaise Pascal about a compulsive gambler.
Okay.
It's not really about the immediate win for the gambler, right? It's the fantasy, the hope of the big jackpot, that thrill of anticipation. Contentment is always fleeting.
So how does that apply to porn?
Well, similarly, a person conditioned by porn isn't just seeking sex. They're hooked on the anticipation of what comes next. That rush of moving from one image, one body to the next, always looking to trade up for what they hope will be the ultimate hit.
The novelty chase again.
Yeah, exactly. And the impact of that mindset on actual real relationships, it's stark.
How so?
Well, for one thing, pornography normalizes extramarital sex. It often portrays it as exciting, thrilling.
Which can lead viewers to accept it as, well, normal.
Right. And that's a huge problem for committed relationships, especially when you consider adultery is a leading cause of divorce in America.
And the source has stories about this.
Oh, yeah, really poignant ones. There's Renata, whose boyfriend literally chose the computer over her because he wanted their sex life to mimic porn, making demands straight out of videos he'd watched.
Ouch.
And Jenny, a young wife and mother, who found she actually needed to watch porn just to get aroused by her own husband.
Wait, she needed porn to be intimate with her husband?
Yeah. Even if she wasn't physically looking at a screen in the moment, she was still choosing a pornographic image in her mind over the real person next to her.
That's deeply sad. Why does this happen? What's the mechanism?
Well, the source suggests, again, it ties back to the brain. Porn use seems to trigger the same reward centers as drug abuse and gambling.
The addiction pathways.
And it feeds these totally unrealistic expectations that, frankly, no person can live up to.
So it sets the bar impossibly high.
Exactly. Luke Gilkerson has this analogy in the book. Men turning to porn aren't really seeking better sex in terms of quality or connection. They're seeking variety, volume, novelty, and convenience.
Like a buffet instead of a meal.
He calls it sexual gluttony rather than intimacy. He compares it to choosing a kind of subpar, all-you-can-eat buffet over a really fine candlelight dinner. The problem, he argues, isn't the dinner, it's the diner's warped mentality.
Wow. So the key takeaway here, that hope that marriage will just magically cure a porn habit.
It's often a false hope, yeah. In fact, the obsession can actively undermine, even destroy, the marriage by eroding intimacy, fostering those unrealistic demands, and making real connection seem, boring or insufficient by comparison.
Okay. Finally, myth number 6. We can't protect our kids from porn in today's world.
Yeah, the feeling of inevitability, it's overwhelming for parents.
Totally. With porn seeming like it's just everywhere online, a lot of parents feel resigned, like exposure is unavoidable. Is it really impossible to shield them?
Well, the challenge is definitely real, no doubt about it. But the book offers this powerful, double-pronged strategy, protecting their minds and preparing their character.
Protecting minds, preparing character. Got it.
And the stats are sobering. Martin Dobney did this documentary, Porn on the Brain, found teens with this encyclopedic knowledge of smut, expecting real-life sex to be like porn sex.
Scary.
And one study showed 93% of boys, 62% of girls see porn before they turn 18, often in these porn binges on their phones.
Those numbers are daunting. But what's the strategy then?
Well, the source really emphasizes parents shouldn't let those trends make them forget their vital role. You're not responsible for every kid, but for your kid.
Right. Focus on your own household.
So, first prong, protecting their minds. This means parents need to be active media gatekeepers.
Like what? What does that involve?
Watching TV and movies with your kids, knowing what magazines they read, what websites they visit, asking critical questions about hypersexualization when you see it, like, is a woman's true value really just about how she looks?
Getting them to think critically.
Exactly. And the book stresses that internet filtering and monitoring tools, things like Covenant Eyes or TeenSafe, are an absolute must.
Non-negotiable.
Pretty much. And no secrecy. Phones stay out of bedrooms at night. Simple rules, but important.
Okay, that's protecting the mind. What about preparing the character?
This is about raising future adults, kids who can navigate this pornified world even when, the filters aren't there or fail.
How do you do that?
It's about modeling love. Fathers consciously turning their heads away from racy images on TV. Mothers affirming inner beauty over just looks. Couples showing real marital affection, stealing kisses, going on dates.
So they see what healthy intimacy looks like.
Exactly. The goal is to make the allure of abusive porn sex just unable to hold a candle to what they've seen at home.
Makes sense.
And it also means setting clear boundaries, using what the book calls authoritative parenting, not authoritarian.
What's the difference?
Authoritative parenting uses discipline to instill character, but with warmth and grace. You allow questions, explain the rules, but the rules are clear, especially about tech use. Getting rid of the option of anonymity and secrecy is key.
Okay. So pulling this last myth apart, while the world is saturated, parents actually have significant power.
They really do. Not necessarily by creating a perfect, impenetrable shield, because that's probably impossible.
Right.
But by fostering critical thinking, building strong character, and maintaining those firm, loving boundaries.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground. We've just unpacked some really deeply ingrained myths today. That porn is just harmless fun, that it empowers women, that it somehow prevents sexual violence, that it doesn't touch our real lives, and that marriage just magically fixes a porn problem.
And each myth, when you look closely, when you consider the research, like in the porn myth, it falls apart, revealing something much more complex and often pretty detrimental.
Yeah.
Pornography, as the source makes really clear, it isn't just a simple pastime. It's a huge industry that commodifies sexuality. It literally rewires our brains. It puts immense strain on relationships.
And it fuels awful things like sexual violence and trafficking.
Tragically, yes. Its widespread acceptance has really warped our collective understanding of sex, of intimacy, of love.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? There's this quote from C.S. Lewis that the book mentions about how we can come to love the prison of ourselves.
Yeah.
Preferring this harem of imaginary partners who demand nothing real from us.
Yeah, who make no demand on his unselfishness.
Right. Preferring that to the messy, difficult, but beautiful reality of true connection. What might our lives, our relationships, maybe even our whole society look like if we consciously chose to, dismantle those internal prisons, to reclaim real, unburdened love?
It's a huge shift, isn't it? A big shift in cultural norms, like the book says, and it definitely takes work.
Yeah.
But as the source itself kind of leaves us asking, are you up for it?